I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Friday, 11/11/2022. It's Veterans Day. I'm a veteran, and on behalf of all the veterans and people in community, tip of the hat, a salute, a warm handshake, a greeting of affection and praise for your service to our country, our community, and to the world. I acknowledge you, I salute you, and I pray with you and for you that the peace we have sought together is a peace that touches us, enfolds us individually, and enfolds our family, our community, and the world. Peace. So today we do the healing circle, and always happy to be in the company of Dr. B, Dr. Bravada, Garrett-Akinsanya. Always happy to be with my writing partner, my classmate from kindergarten, Brenda, Lyle-Gray. Brenda, Dr. B, good afternoon. Both of you, how you doing?
Fine, brother.
Good.
Hello, Shiro.
Shiro back at you.
I'm still just focusing and contemplating on the meaning of the midterms. I'm so happy about what happened here in Minnesota and excited for what may happen. Hopefully, before this program is over, we might get joined by, perhaps Brother Attorney General Keith might drop in. No guarantee. We've asked him if he's got room in the schedule to drop in on us. We've also asked Senator Bobby Joe Champion. By the way, Senator Champion has now been named the president of the Minnesota Senate. Big job, important job, a powerful job. So all this stuff is happening, and it all goes to us
cool.
Paying attention, showing up, voting, and we simply need to keep it going. We can't stop. We can't rest. It just means we're at a new starting place. We're going to work just as hard and harder. I see Brother Oliver Williams has joined us too. Brother Oliver, good to see you, my friend.
Good to be seen.
When you're not here, I miss you. So I'm glad you're here. Let's begin though with the protocol of Dr. B sort of convening us and sharing with our viewers and listeners the process, the concept.
Thank you, Brother Al. Village Baba, we really thank you so much for leading us in this process of bringing the healing circle every week to our community and our whole nation and even abroad. So thank you for that wide reach of showing love. We talk about the healing circle every week because using an African-centered model, African people do all the most important discussion in circle. And the circle is precious and sacred to us because everyone, no matter who you are, has voice in that space. So when one is in the circle, you have an equal access to the center, which is the place of power. So we love to talk in circle. We also honor our elders in circle. Their voices go first. Their voices give us permission. Their voices are the stronghold to us in the past and to us in the future. That strength that our elders brings gives us the space to respect them and respect our elders because they're closest to our ancestors. And our ancestors are the shoulders that we all stand on. And we stand on them with gratitude. In addition to our ancestors, of course, honoring our ancestors, we do that because they're closest to our Creator. And African people are a very proud people and a very grateful people. And because of that pride and that gratitude, we also believe in order. And in order, we use the talking stick. And in circle, we have that stick, and whoever holds that stick has the voice and the attention of the circle. And although we are not physically together in one room, we are connected in spirit through our circle. And so we use a virtual talking stick in our interactions. And as today we engage, you can ask for the stick. It will be passed through the circle. And as people comment, they give and grow a deeper understanding, give and grow a deeper commitment to the health and well-being of our community. So with that, I'll pass the talking stick back to our great leader, Brother Al McFarlane, and he will begin to initiate the circle as we move forward.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I want to begin with, I'm making notes for a presentation I'm making tomorrow afternoon at the Black Ink. You remember Sister Rekhet Siasar was on the program, maybe not on this day, but on one of our days, and talked about a writing book project. And I'm the editor of a forthcoming book and have generated the opening chapter of the book about my journalist experience. And tomorrow I'll be presenting as the keynote of their annual event. So I'm putting together notes now for that presentation. And I'm starting off with the words I've learned by watching the colleagues, the friends, the companions at Narrative and Nubia, Narrative with a K, Nubia with a K. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Marios Beatty, who teaches the course in hieroglyphics, ancient African civilizations, begins his course each time with the greeting, and the greeting is Ankh Uja Sanab. So I greet you all with that ancient African greeting, Ankh Uja Sanab. It means life, Ankh, prosperity is Ujab, and Sanab, health. It means I wish you life, I wish you prosperity, I wish you health. And I think that's a perfect sequence or sequel to the introduction that you've given us, Dr. B, of how we established a presence and connection and continuity, that our goal in everything is how do we find ways to be together that affirm life, that create prosperity, and that support our health. Well, with that, I've said the greeting. I'm going to pass the talking stick to my brother, Oliver Williams. Dr. Williams, good afternoon, brother.
Good afternoon, Baba. Let's see. One of the things that did anybody see Black Panther yet?
Not yet, but I hope you did. Want to talk about it?
I saw it, and I want to talk about it.
Yeah. Bottom line.
I expected it to be okay, but I didn't expect it to be great. I don't know why, but it was great. And I thought that they did a nice tribute to Chadwick Boseman in it. But they've got a few surprises in it. And so I want to alert you all to that possibility, but it was really well done. And when I was a kid, I used to pay attention to Marvel Comics quite a bit. And the Namor character, the Submariner, was interesting. So they did a nice job of bringing that about and also sort of telling a little bit about their history. And I think that one of the senses that I got from seeing it is that it did a lot to pay tribute to, as we were talking about traditions and the shoulders that we stand on and elders, but also traditions and why those traditions are important and how they sort of, if we adhere to those things, how they can maintain us in an important way. And so I appreciated that. And appreciated some of the things that you were saying earlier on, Al, when you were introducing the show, and you were talking about some of the things that we need to get our heads around, and the things that we notice in terms of other people who've been doing the work. And I thought it was fascinating looking at the elections. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering whether we're getting closer to being done with Trump. Mm-hmm. Because I think even Republicans are saying, what is he contributing to anything? Mm-hmm. And he's not. So, but I think that I think he wants to be honored just because he's who he is, mm-hmm. not because of what he's done. And they argue about the economy. Can you imagine the economy if he was president? And they don't pay attention to the lies that he's told over the years. They don't pay attention to the fact that he doesn't know how to string sentences together. He doesn't know how to seek peace, but people are talking about socialism, and then you look at Russia, and Russia is supposedly a socialist country, but you have people who want to ride and die with Trump without looking about his connections to Russia, his connections to Korea, his connections to China.
Right.
And these, and I guess the other thing I think about him and Giuliani, the lies that they told in New York for those young boys who were being held for the Central Park assaults, and so I don't know whether you're getting some people to wake up to any of that, but I also
they're all Christian nationalists.
Isn't that something?
Dr. Williams?
Whatever that means.
That's
exactly. I want a definition for that. I'm sorry, I didn't. But that's that little piece of Trump. Christian nationalist. How can you be a Christian and a nationalist and not love your brother or sister?
That's right. Yeah, the rules are very different.
Fragile.
And is obviously not the guy that I pay attention to. And so anyway, those are some of the things that, as we were beginning the show, that were running across my mind. And I recommend go see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And I think other cultures and groups would appreciate what's going on as well. But it's also interesting looking back at some of the things that have been taking place, and I think it's something that we as in the U.S. have to take a look at too, in terms of our history and how we've treated people. So with that, thanks for having me again. So, and I pass the stick to my sister Brenda.
Oh, I thought about Marcus Owens today. I told Al I had an interview. He is one of the participants for 110, the organization for trying to connect and of talent and corporations and jobs, because we're 2.4 unemployment for whites and 7.8 for blacks. So I thought about the election. I'm not there. I celebrated. I had tears for Keith Ellison, and I'm 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
But I think the Twin Cities are on a brink. They're just ready to roll over. I just hope they seize upon the moment. And after I talked to Marcus Owens this morning, I said, there's hope. I'm hoping to come to Minneapolis this spring. I really want to see the Black women's wealth
can you ignite?
Yeah. So that would be, of course, seeing my boss, it's been years, but it's such a wonderful time for everyone. And then to hear that Bobby Joe champion, oh my goodness, right at the forefront. And he was so interesting when Al interviewed him. He said, I don't want to be here on November 9th and not know what to say. He was just to the point. And I was telling Marcus today, it's just so many. Al, I heard that Adair Mosley was with the African American Forum. And you remember he was my second or third article 2 years ago. And I said, that young man is going to be someone. I say that about Angela and Sean Lewis, but I said that Adair Mosley is something else. And I've been trying to find that first article. But, y'all are just in such a beautiful place. And the money, as Brett, what's Brett's Buckner said, well, we don't have any excuses anymore because we're going to shake. And I'm writing a commentary right now based on Anika Robbins and Brett's interview with Al. And he said, we hold the gavels now. Mm-hmm. And I love that because you do. And it's a beautiful thing. So as I told Anika, take beautiful pictures of your celebrations because you have every right to celebrate.
That's right.
So I'm going to pass it back to Baba McFarlane.
Well, I want to pass it back to Dr. Williams because I want to hear more about Black Panther.
Okay.
I don't mind spoilers myself because it just means that, some people are sensitive. You don't want to give the plot away. You can give it away to me because I'm going to go see it anyhow, and I'll just watch more carefully.
Yeah,
I know more. So
I don't want people to do a hit on me when I'm walking down the street.
That's right.
So what I can do is I can tell you the things that I really appreciated about it. Yeah. And but I don't want to give any spoilers because you got to see it.
Before you do, here's what I've heard. I've heard that the phenomenalness of it includes this whole emphasis on STEM technology with Black women, Black girls, and that is a game changer, right? And I heard that it also is instructive and visionary in asking us to reimagine what allyship is, what relationship should be between Black and brown people around the world. So those are two things I've heard. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And one person I talked to said, well, this show versus the first one might not be as, what's the right word? How the first one really appealed to babies, to kids and adults.
Right.
This one, my friend told me, probably targets deep thinking adults even more, though the fascinating for children is there. And so it won't be lost on a child, but it really demands and requires that those of us who are older, more experienced, trained, really invest in the ideas presented. So what do you think? That's what I've heard. That's why I'm excited about going to see it this weekend sometime.
Yeah.
Al, when you talked about allyship, that was Brother Femi. Remember when you interviewed him and he said the core of all of this is allyship. Being able to have coalitions and to come together. And it was like Brett said, one step at a time.
Yeah.
You have the gavels, but you can't jump in there, and you need them too.
Yeah.
I also thought that there's something about looking at critical moments, when you're making a choice and you could sort of reflect on the choice that you made.
Yep.
And how does that influence how you feel? And that if people are not doing that, there's something about looking at the consequences of things that might happen as a result of one not sort of stepping back and trying to do the right thing. And another thing for me is, when is it right to let go? I think of, sort of working with men who batter. And one of the things that they have to overcome is being angry and taking it out on other people and being harmful to other people. And then the question that I have is, so when do they get to a point where they don't struggle with letting their frustration and anger visiting it on other people? When can they step back and take responsibility for it and then not continue to pass it on?
It's a great question.
And I had this young man I'm doing some work with who's been quite a leader himself. I don't think that all men who batter change, but I think that there's some men who batter who do change.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I don't know. We should probably have Dominique on, but Dominique Waldtower and his ex-wife, Mary Hernandez, and they talk about their journey from him being violent and abusive to them making a decision mutually that they needed to get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're great co-parents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they don't look as old as I'm about to say, because they got one son that's 31 and another one that's 27 and another one that's like in 23. But they're, I'm doing this presentation in June about the intersection of fatherhood and domestic violence in Texas. In Austin, Texas, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
It's my stomping ground.
I know. And so for Texas Council on Family Violence. And so the thing is fascinating. So I'm going to interview Dominique again. And one of the things that he said to me was, when we talked to our kids about what we were doing, he says, the kids said, "You guys suck." So we didn't have a problem with you two getting divorced, and which was fascinating because I've got 3 other videos of people talking about it. One with my friend Anthony and another friend Johnny Rice, and I got Johnny Rice's father to talk about it too, and then his changing transformation. And the thing that's interesting is the things, how they were affected, and the person that's abusive is unaware of it, and then they also don't try to direct themselves towards that. Mm-hmm. But in those cases, the men that I spoke to made an effort to try to become aware, and I think that was the critical moment. Mm-hmm. Was in when they became aware about how their violence impacted the people that were around them. And they had a different view of the children and also the person that they were abusing, that those persons don't deserve that. And I remember Mr. Rice, it's Johnny Rice, this Dr. Johnny Rice II and Mr. Johnny Rice I. And he ended up saying, he said, I realized that I was being selfish. And he said that he had to take all of his bad habits. He had to put them in a box. He had to seal the box. Then he had to burn the box. Mm-hmm. And that's something in terms of one getting a sense of themselves, but also the impact that they have on somebody else. And very important, I think, in terms of what we can learn and what people can do differently. So
let me grab the talking stick for a minute, because one of the things you just said stood out to me. I have this belief that hate hurts. And I'm thinking of a case of a woman I worked with for a while, and her I actually have worked with several women who were batterers, as well as those who did the battering. Right. I mean, who were battered. And one of the constancies that I see is this unleashed pre-morbid, we call it pre-morbid anger. And I've learned that anger is always the second emotion, that before we get to anger, right, there are things like isolation, loneliness, shame, hurt, grief, horror, fear. And then after those things comes anger about that emotion. Yeah. So when I think about I say hate hurts. People hate that part of themselves. They may hate that experience they had. And then they carry that hurt and that hate all balled up and throw it onto others. And the process of healing requires almost, you know how they used to have those balls, and you when you take the top out of it, like maybe they used to have rubber balls, and then this like rubber bands one across another. They have to literally unravel all of those sources of hate, all of those sources of feeling so empty and helpless. That's one of the biggest ones. And when they go through that process, they start understanding that they're hurting others is an extension of their hate, of their experience, of themselves, of their past. And they start realizing that actually they have a lot more choice in what they do, as opposed to feeling so compelled. And when people are cowards, I'm going to say that word on purpose. When people are cowards and they are afraid to understand themselves, when they're afraid to understand themselves, that's when they lash out to others. Because it's so much easier to blame somebody else for your hurt and your inadequacy than it is to stop and say, what role do I play in this? And when you see courageous people often come to therapy. They are courageous because they know their shame, their experience, their lack of, and their potential, which may also be frightening. Whether it be positive or negative, their potential may be unveiled while they're in that process of therapy. So they're afraid, and it takes courage to get in there, because you don't know what kind of mess or what kind of gifts you're going to find in that process. And so I have found when I work with people who tend to be batterers, that when they stop and really decide to do what you just said that brother did, look at themselves, that sometimes they fool around and find that all of this pain, this shame, this rage, it was so unworth it. When all the time I had inside me, the thing, the cure, the answers for my pain. When they introduce themselves to their, what I call their inner child, that part of us that's the God part that never changes, that inner child that's vulnerable, that's loving, that's caring and playful. All of us got that part of us that connects us to the Creator directly without words or meaning. And when they find that, that's when they really heal.
Well, and to continue on with what you're saying in terms of people taking this journey and then developing this revelation, one of the things that happens is that they start on a new journey, because they start to ask themselves the question, what role did I have in this? Because I've worked with, some men who batter, who are abusive to one partner, and they're blaming it on that partner. But then when they get with another partner and they're using the same behavior with that partner, then one of the things that comes up is the fact that they're aware that they just can't point to one person and the interaction with that one person. They're doing something. And then asking the question, what role do I have in this harm that's being done? And then when one starts to take a look at oneself, there's a whole nother game being played, and which can last for a period of time. I hear people talking about the awakenings that they have after they get to the point of reflection, trying to figure out what role they had and what was going on. And I think Dominique is an interesting person, because I think he has these revelations, and he puts them on Facebook. And I'm going to try to get the name of his. How do you go to it? He sends them to me, all the time. But he has these good words that he says to to people who are dealing with their violence and abuse and things that they have to be aware of associated with that in order for change to take place. And I think that's what happens. I worked with this one man that was really upset with his partner because all the ashtrays were filled with cigarettes. And so he was skulking around the house, being angry that there's all these ashtrays filled. But then when I asked him, I said, who in your house smokes? Well, he was the only one in the house that was smoking. So when he was angry, he needed to be angry with himself for what he was doing, and then taking responsibility for self. And oftentimes it's easier for people to point to someone else and have them take responsibility for what they're frustrated with when there's certain things that they have to take ownership for, which is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I see these Facebook users hurting people, hurt people, and then other people who are also sort of co-signing what we're saying. They think that what we're saying is so true. So
it is, and so and I think it's especially important on a day when we're honoring veterans.
Yeah,
and I want to venture to say that veterans who joined, like I had a brother in the Navy, one in the Army, one in the Air Force, and they all served during Vietnam.
Oh.
And those brothers, they came back different people than they went. In some ways, they grew to be more organized, coming out of a chaotic home like we lived in. They tend to be more, a little more rigid and compulsive, and they learned to obey rules. But in other ways, they had a lot of racism they had to deal with.
Yeah.
In the middle of a Vietnam War, when the people with you may be your brothers in the battle, but then when you come home or you come back stateside, I think that's what they called it.
Yeah.
When you come back, they don't know you anymore. They mistreat you and they suddenly, quote unquote, turn white on you. And so one of the things that I think about when I link that to our vote we had on Tuesday is that there are all kind of veterans. We may have veterans of war who go to Vietnam and who go to other places and serve, but we also have veterans who are working in our city councils, who are working in our state legislatures and our nation. And that war is one that seems to be also one that creates woundedness. So I think about Stacey Abrams and how hard she worked, and that some of her vote she was supposed to get from the Black community was lacking, and how Kemp, as dirty as he has behaved over the course of the years, right, how he still stands strong and lifted up by community, and how so many people who are in those communities call themselves Christians, like Sister Brenda was saying, call themselves Christians, but the God I serve, he doesn't believe that anybody's better than anybody else. The God I serve would not like to stop somebody from having voice or vote. Right. And so I can't understand how people who experience and give so much in one place have to come back home, come back to community, and still keep fighting for us to be loved. Because that's really what we're asking for, love and respect.
That's right. That's right.
So Brother Al, you want to talk
spit? So my question is one of alignment. I really love this conversation, the direction, because it places responsibility and accountability on each of us as individuals to examine our own challenges, our own failures, and our own successes, but also to dig deep and know our potential and to continue to strive to move toward the personal development, knowing that development occurs within family, within community. Nobody is alone. We're here together, and to recognize that and to act that way means everything. So that's one set. That's the way I'm projecting out the analysis that you, Dr. Williams, and Dr. B have provided. Analysis that, again, asks us to look at ourselves individually. But then, as you were describing those challenges, I was trying to see how those descriptions apply to society. If a society is abusive, like the individual you described who is abusive, where does it go? How does it resolve itself? And you raised the question that if an individual could look within and get the help and work out, he or she would discover that his healing or her healing also, what's the right word? I'm trying to replay my understanding of what you said, but taking it to a societal level, if the society could heal the way we described that is possible for the individual, how different would things be? And then what role do we all have in urging, moving, facilitating? I don't want to use the word forcing, but that's part of the description here, that change, that development, that movement towards healing in the society. Is that a contradiction? Can you force healing? I don't know. Might be an oxymoronic concept.
No, for me, I think that it, so I think one has to be aware of themselves on a regular basis, because I think there could be a tendency to fall back in the bad habits. But the thing, so when I see what Joe Biden is doing with regard to trying to stop inflation, but to have regard for people that are not millionaires and billionaires. When I see him, Obama, trying to make healthcare easier for people to access rather than people struggling to get access to healthcare, but also to be able to pay for it. There's some awareness that humanity matters. And to me, the thing I wonder is when you have people who seem to be cut off from that, what happened to them? It doesn't discourage me from doing what I need to do to be able to help people, because that my God, wants people to do that. But for people who don't have any empathy or feel as though there's no responsibility they have to help someone else, I wonder what happened to them. So if I'm going in the right direction, my heart confirms that I'm going in the right direction. If I'm not, one of the things that I think I've got to do is reflect on what stops that. One of the things is among the hardest thing for me to do is to forgive my enemies. I think of what Jesus did, and I know that there are other faith traditions, but many of them have the same insight in terms of how we're supposed to nurture and care for other people. But there's some awareness for when I think of forgiveness, I think it's also primarily for the person that's been harmed. Because what I always say is that when you don't forgive, it's like the person that you're upset with is living in your head without paying rent. So what you've got to do is you've got to find a way to be able to let it go. And for a victim of abuse, she can't expect that justice is always going to happen, but she can't carry around all those things that has occurred for her where she's been harmed by it. She's got to learn how to let it go. And I always say that the best revenge is doing well.
Mm.
And then if she continues to do well, the consequence is that she does better. And I think for somebody that's been abusive, that's one thing that harms them. If they feel as though their abuse is continued on, but if she gets to a place where she's indifferent about that, Bishop Mitchell in Mississippi makes a point. He says, Oliver, when I've looked at injury, and he grew up in a household where there's domestic violence,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked about the fact that he sort of saw it as a scar. And that he said that, initially when you touch the scar, it's very, very painful. But after a time, he says you can touch the scar and it doesn't hurt anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that one can, live past that and being able to recognize it. And, you're not going to forget that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can do is make accommodation for it and realize that you move on.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting seeing some families that have been able to do that. But I always tell battered women, I say, look, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that you allow that person to come back in your space and
that's right.
to do harm to you.
That's right.
You don't let that happen.
That's right.
You move forward, and and there's been so many people. Mildred Muhammad, the sister that was married to the DC sniper, she and I are friends, and so she would be an interesting person to have on the show.
We should bring her.
Yeah, because Mildred has a story to tell. I had her at one of my conferences, and the conference is about healing, and we're talking about battered women that heal, but also with regard to her children. And she had these children that her children loved their father.
Yeah.
But the thing that was fascinating was he was doing harmful things to people.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how do you reconcile that? Because they put her at a distance. And she had to figure out how to cultivate their relationship again. And which is an interesting and fascinating story, about what she was able to do, given that context of what she was exposed to. So, healing is an important thing, and battered women need to know that they can heal.
And they also need to know, brother Dr. Oliver, that they also got to know that what their experience is not quote unquote normal.
Right.
And it is not all right.
That's right.
And so people, whether they experience isolation, where they're the only one, whether that happens in an intimate relationship or on a larger social cultural level, where you're the only one at the office, you're the only one in the Senate, you're the only one in the House, you're the only one at work, you're the only one in the police department, you're the only one, you're isolated. That's a sign. And that is not, and how you treat it may not be so well. And that isolation is a sign or a risk factor for abuse. And then we know that they have this thing called power and control wheel, where if you're a victim of violence, or you're going to be not just isolated, you're going to be emotionally abused, you're going to be economically abused. And we know that there are women or men even who are just held down and so monitored on their spending that they can't even go get a hamburger without their partner having a fit. And we know on a larger social economic level, for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 72 cents. And for every dollar a white person makes, a black one makes 62 cents. And we got a raise. It used to be 58. And so we know that using children and how using them as pawns is a part of that domestic violence in terms of intimate partner relationships. But we see it on a larger social cultural level when we talk about overrepresentation of Black kids in juvenile justice, out of home placement, child protection, special ed, where people are making money, millions off our misery. In honor of Dr. Al's, Brother Al's conversation, he talks about that. And we also know using male privilege is often a part of domestic violence, but we also see it using white privilege on a social cultural level, using American privilege on a social cultural level, looking at how people threaten us. That's another sign of it, right? Intimidation is another sign of it in intimate relationships, but it's also in our country.
That's right.
Intimidating people going to vote, getting voting police squad. What kind of craziness is that? So I think we heal when we come back to thinking about community inclusion.
Right.
And on a smaller level, family inclusion. You got resources, your family and friends. If it's crazy, they say, girl, that ain't right. And that's why batterers don't want you to talk to them. Because somebody may fool around and say, girl, you know, you didn't used to take this kind of mess.
Right.
You mean you making more and he's controlling your pocketbook?
Right.
You know, I knew you in college. You were the only one that ever had money.
Right.
It's reality that gives us the chance to look at what's well, and connecting to others keeps us in touch of what's well, what's healing, what's quote unquote our normal. So I think it goes on both levels, that it's just replicated, because hurt people, like one of our listeners said, hurt people fool around and hurt people.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely true. And it's interesting, you know, it's kind of like, so what is, says we must forgive our enemies so we can be free to go on and live our lives. And I think forgive is letting it go, in my opinion. It's not continuing to live the same experience over and over again and expecting justice, you know. And let me rephrase that. Expecting them to get hit by a rock and to take them out. That may never happen. That's right. And but one also needs to be able to move on. You know?
But also, I've learned, and I think of scripture when somebody said, how many times do I have to forgive?
Right.
7 times? He said, no, 70 times
7. Yeah.
And so I found that forgiveness is an intentional, deliberate act
That's right.
of resistance.
Right.
You are not going to let that experience steal or rob you from your joy or your blessings. That's why I believe Jesus said you have to constantly forgive over and over and over and over. And I love that you said forgiveness does not require you to stay with that person. Right. Forgiveness says, I'm not taking this stinky bag of crap around me all day, every day where I go. I'm gonna let this go. Like Erykah Badu said in her song "Bag Lady." You can't catch the bus because you got too much stuff. You gotta pack light. So that's what we gotta remember to do. Right. Set some of those bags down and don't keep taking them where we go.
That's right. It's absolutely true.
Brenda, what you think?
You got to turn on your you're muted. Gotta unmute yourself.
I wanted to get back to veterans since we're a few minutes. Al, I wanted us to think about the young men that went to Vietnam that lived in our neighborhood. And a lot of young men from the Santa Fe area went to Vietnam, and they came back and they were addicted to Agent Orange. And I don't want to forget about them. They were like 19, 20. They didn't have the money to go to college. The white guys were like going off, and they were going to Vietnam, and they came back and they were so injured. And when Dr. Williams talked about forgiveness, I wonder if they had any about how they were treated in Vietnam, about how they were treated when they came back. I don't want to forget them. You know, Dwight Reeves, Dwight Parker, all of these guys that just didn't want to go, hid. It reminded me of this guy this Republican that had just written this book, and he said, well, if we would have kept our borders protected, Pelosi wouldn't have gotten. And I'm saying, how many people, first of all, hid in Canada, but how many came across the border? You know, so, and when you talked about forgiveness, you know, before I go to sleep, no matter what I've gone through, I say the Lord's Prayer. But when I get to trespasses, forgive me for mine and those who trespass against me, I have a problem. Because I've gone through everything that Dr. B just talked about, and I've gone through it recently. Senior abuse, awaken at 3 times a night, not being able to move, you just name it. But it's faith, and it's confidence, and it's determination. And the young man that I just interviewed this morning, Marcus Owens, he said some of that. This is what, you know, I mentioned the fact that we needed to get our young Black men prepared to vote, you know, and to know that their vote counted. And, you know, he said, but Brenda, we're almost there because we just won. And I said, but as Brett Buckner said, it starts the next day. Because 2024 is closer than we think.
Yeah.
So I think about those young guys that came back and they were down at my old high school getting high on the track. And it's because they couldn't forget the jungles of Vietnam and not knowing who was the enemy and who was the ally.
Brenda, I got something for you around some of that, but it's still the same themes. There's a brother, I used to be a substance abuse counselor in central Illinois. And so there was a brother that had been to Vietnam. And Platoon had just come out, the movie Platoon. And so he went to see it, and he had flashbacks. So, you know, he hadn't been to session in a bit, so he and I ran into each other in the community, and I asked him what was going on. He said that he started to have reactions given what he saw. His experience in Vietnam was challenging, not only because of the craziness that was going on due to the war, but his platoon leader was a Ku Klux Klansman.
I had that.
And didn't give him a weapon. So, and he was the only Black person in his platoon. So he had to depend on some other people, some people who were Italian, some people who were, you know, from other groups, ethnic groups, to be able to support him when a firefight took place. Those things came back. And he said, so I'm going to, you know, cut it short. So one of the things that happened was he learned how to rely on the people that he could rely on that were going to be supportive of him. But the other thing that happened is that platoon leader got killed. And because he was doing some foolishness to other people too. And I'm not saying who killed him. You know, it wasn't my guy, you know, but I'm just saying that the injustice that took place, there was a consequence for that. and by somebody, whether it's the Viet Cong but that was something that happened. But when he came back home, he had to reflect on those things, and doing drugs was a way for him to um, deal with some of the challenges. But he had to learn how to let go of that, in order to get healthy. And so I think when people, and there were other guys that were substance abuse counselors who had gone to Vietnam. One person was a rat, a tunnel rat. And those people would go into the tunnels that the Viet Cong would develop and hide in. And his job was to go in there, chase people out. And then and so he was a counselor there. It was a white guy who was a counselor there. And the thing that was interesting to me, he ended up doing some groups with guys who were from Vietnam that dealt with some of the challenges associated with that. So, I think the biggest thing I guess I want to leave us with is the idea that there are many paths to find healing. It's not just one. And I think and some of the things that we've talked about today, I think I sort of highlight some of those things. And Bravada, as you were speaking to, I've worked with women who were perpetrators of domestic violence as well. And I think that people who have been victims of abuse have to reflect on their feelings associated with it. And sometimes their feelings are connected with a sense of vulnerability, sense of powerlessness, and how they felt during that time. And being the person that's in power and being abusive helps one feel some control over it.
That's right.
And one has to learn how to give that up because it doesn't get them where they want to go.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you before we leave.
I have an image. I was pulling up an image of a brother I talked to the night before last. His name is Ray Robinson. He's 101 years old.
Wow.
And Ray Robinson was trained. He was a military, maybe 30-year career man. He's from Texas. Homeboy, Dr. B. And
good, Al. I just brought that up.
You did?
Remember I said about the man that got on the bus and he had his uniform on and they told him to go to the back to sit down? I won't forget him.
Here he is, if you can see that.
Phenomenal.
Do you see it on the screen?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm trying to share it then. As you hold on, if I can get it. Here it comes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, that's
Sergeant Ray Robinson, who was a combat soldier during World War II, was in the campaign to liberate Italy. There was a movie made, Fort something, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about the black fighters that were sent in front of the main troops to liberate and clear out the Italian and Nazi soldiers that were in a situation that gave them great advantage and caused great harm to the Allied forces that were coming there. So he was involved in that campaign and others, and came back multi-decorated warrior soldier. And here he was being honored at a Vikings football game. This was maybe 2 years ago when he was just past his 99th birthday. So he's 101 now.
Cool.
His birthday is in coming up in December or January. He'll be 101, I think, maybe 102.
And he's so keen for 101 or 100.
Right.
Oh, and, he's so good.
I was telling him that and just talking to him, thinking about veterans, my veteran story is that I served in the Navy on a ship, a destroyer, complement of 300 or so, sailors. And on my ship, when I was it was during the Vietnam era, we did Mediterranean cruises and Caribbean cruises. I never did see Vietnam. So the only combat that I experienced as a sailor was the 6 of us fighting the other 300 white boys on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And the story, Dr. Williams, was that whenever we pulled into a place like Malta or Crete or anywhere we had shore duty, they would give you beer breaks, right? They pull up to a deserted island. Everybody gets on a small boat, pulls up to the beach, set up 3 or 4 cases of beer and some hamburgers and hot dogs. So that's a little bit of stress relief, right?
Right.
But when white boys drink, they get crazy. They feel comfortable.
Take some
acting
water
as a group in ways they wouldn't act individually.
Yep.
And the 6 of us had decided whenever that demon shows his face, you got to deal with it. And that's what we did, right? So every time we had one of our shipmates try to go there, we had to deal with that shipmate, and we did it consistently, regularly. So that was my combat story. We're fighting white people. And one story I'll talk about is how we were in Malta, and my best friend and I were in this place, and one of the 6 black guys on our ship was a big guy that people liked to target. He was so big that people were always intimidated by him, and the shore patrol and drunk white boys always pick on him because he was intimidating, because he was big.
Right.
And he tried to avoid conflict, but conflict was just attracted to him because he represented something that was a challenge to them, just his stature, his size, his presence. And so we had to fight our way out of a bar into the street, and had a couple of people go this way, a couple go that way, trying to get him back to the ship without being, hurt or hurting somebody, more likely hurting somebody. And me and my buddy ran down one way, and we were being chased down the street by some number of shore patrol, shore police, with their batons out, getting ready to, I think, beat us up, subdue us. They were saying, halt, 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 under arrest. We kept running. So finally I said, man, why are we running? We haven't done anything. Right. Let's stop. So we stopped and waited for them. And they got there, and again, batons drawn in there over the head, and feeling like they were going to strike. And somehow I say, Dr. B, the Spirit, told me to speak, and I did. And I just remember a litany of describing injustice in America.
Wow.
What's happening right now is not new, is not different. This is how it always goes down. And so you may kill me. We may die right here, right now. But the world should know, the record's got to reflect that you were told, and I have spoken, a truth, right, about this relationship, this history, the dynamic of your power over our innocence. When we were innocent men, we were serving our country, we were about to be killed by our men, our point of view. It didn't happen. As it turned out, somebody else who had authority showed up and said, hold it. Who are you guys? What's this about? He heard the story. So the funny part is that I just start speaking, and it's like, the scripture says, told Moses, take no thought of what you want to say. You go there, I'll put the words in your mouth.
That's right.
And I tell you, that's what my story was that day.
That's deep.
The words were there. So when I finished saying what I had to say, it was done. It was complete. And my brother said, Al, keep talking.
That's right.
I said, nothing else to say. So he started talking, but it wasn't the same. But it saved us for a minute. And then that's when somebody came up and dismissed all of them. Said, you guys go on your way. I call that moment in sort of also a Joshua moment. It was a moment where it seemed like the sun stood still in the sky, where nightfall was imminent, and the Creator stayed the hand of time, stayed the hand of the enemy, and allowed us to walk out on and through and across on dry land, free, unscathed, unbeaten, whole, and able to testify. So they knew that's my story.
He's always obvious, isn't he? He makes himself quite clear.
Yeah, and I might
want
add,
to hear it or not.
That's right. And I would like to add, I want to add this, Brother Al. I don't know what happened before that day, but since that day, that same creator is using you in the same way.
Oh, yeah.
He's still measuring your thoughts and your actions and your spirit, and you're still following those divine orders.
Yep.
I'm telling you. And no wonder the show is called Conversations with Al.
Robert Bogle said that.
No
impact that you have had on that community and now globally. Look at what you've done for Yoji. Oh my goodness. I love to see his smile because you've opened up that door to Brazil. And then we were able to witness through the process that Lulu won that election. Mm-hmm. That's just a mind blower to me. I think that's great. Yeah. And then what happened to the Twin Cities? You were right in the middle of all of that. You got the message out.
And you still are the village scribe.
That's it.
You still still keep our history. And for that, I want to say before we shut down, Happy Veterans Day.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda.
And know that people are appreciative because all of the people that I talked to on the side and interviewing and following up on articles, my goodness, the accolades that they give you. What I've say it over and over. What a legacy. Mm-hmm. And what an honor for me to be writing for him.
Me too, brother.
And Dr. Williams, did you get Dr. Elizabeth's article?
I don't think I saw it.
We have to make sure that you got it and she got it.
Okay.
Everyone's talking about that article. So I said, I got to make for sure Dr. Williams has that article.
told her that there was something out there, but if you can send me the link, I can forward it to her. And if you send it to the OWMS63 at gmail.com, OWMS63 at gmail.com.
I'd like for Al to send it because he can send it through the newspaper and her picture is there.
I'll do that.
Yeah. So
it.
Al, if you get a chance.
Not an issue. I'll do it today. Listen, This has been a good hour as always.
Love it.
My closing thought here is that I remain grateful and thankful for the opportunity. Glad to be alive. I'm glad to be here. And I feel like this is the beginning, a new beginning, but the beginning never ends. That's the point I want to make. That we're in a moment of perpetual beginning and endings that never materialize. Transformation is ongoing, happens all the time, everywhere, to everything, everybody. And to recognize it is to know joy. That's what I think. Listen, my friends, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.